Hey, tubers. I just released a film yesterday with all three of my William Crookes trains running, and I was asked for information about these trains. Marx made them in 1959 to 60, and then I will show you a train up above that they made in 1973, and it was sold at Sears only. And this is a smoker, and it's a really good smoker. And it'll stink the room up real great. Fortunately, didn't set off the smoke alarms. And you'll see an E unit back here because Marx took a double reduction motor and they ran it backwards from the 666 and 1666. So get a good look at this. Here's your steam release, which is exactly like the William Crookes. The original William Crookes was made in 1861, and it had three domes. It had the steam release, it had the sand dome, if I could talk, sand dome here, and it had the whistle there, and it was number one. And I think Marx did a heck of a job of making a toy that look like the real thing. The only thing you're going to see on the real train are some valves and things around in this area that actually you'll see Marx put a little valve right there. But this is how they came, the factory. I think you can see the William Crookes decal on here. Most of them have faded over the years, as has this, and I decided not to replace it simply because it can still be read, and I don't like changing my trains. I like them to remain stock as possible. And you'll see a little rectangular, possibly you'll be able to see a rectangular gold decal right there. So let's move this train up. This is not the tender that came with the set, and Greenberg's price guide gives a confusing description of the tenders that were put out for this car. So I'm not sure if this came out in 59 and 60 or if it came out in 73. I'm assuming it came out in 73 because it has a knuckle coupler, a static knuckle coupler. And you'll notice it only has four wheels, two wheels on each side obviously. But fellow that sold me the short stack train, Crookes train from Sears, also had this and said, would you be interested in this? And I said, yes, I would. And you'll notice they did a really nice job of the wood stack lithography on the top and the valve for the water. And I've always been impressed by this tender, but I never had a Crookes train to pull it with, so now I do. And this is my first Crookes train, and the original Crookes only had a baggage car and one passenger car, and later they when they converted over to coal and they had a little more power, they added a sleeper. So here's the number 1 baggage car, and you'll notice there's no smokestacks on the top for the potbelly stoves, and there's no railing between the 2 cars or brake handles. And later I wanted to add 1 more car, and this is what I got. And there is a substantial frame underneath this on both sides. You've got your handrail and your brake wheel on the front of it, and the same thing on the back. And you've got 2 stacks for the old potbelly stove. Now, if I had been running this with the original tender, this is the original tender. And the decal has been replaced. It was so badly faded you couldn't read it. And it's 1st Division, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad. So let's get this out of the way. And this is my 2nd William Crookes train. Adjust the camera. Much the same as the first, except it's got this William Crookes, which has been imprinted into the plastic, and you can feel the letters. This is not a decal, this is part of the shell. Should have also mentioned they all say number 1 on the sand dome, and that is the number of the William Crookes. The original William Crookes train is number 1. And this was the Tales of Wells Fargo set. The tender did say Tales of Wells Fargo. You could barely read it. There are decals available online, except I couldn't find any. It was the end of the run, and I got a hold of the guy who made the decals for the 1st Division, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad, and asked him if he had the Tales of Wells Fargo decals. He said yes, he did, and he sold me a Wells Fargo, Tales of Wells Fargo, which was an old show on television. And they made a huge set, which is now worth quite a bit of money. There's a western town, and stagecoach, and buckboards, and cowboys and Indians, and furniture, and just about everything. The when Marx made a building, they usually made it like a dollhouse with an interior and exterior, and it came flat, and you folded it and put the tabs in the holes. It's tab and slot. Put the tabs in the holes and put the building together. And it had swinging doors on the bar and a Wells Fargo office, and I don't remember what all, because I never had that set. We weren't that rich. I had Lincoln Logs, which were a lot more fun. Now you'll see the stagecoach car. Now I suppose I could be a smartass and kid you and say this is an original stagecoach car. It is not. This is an original Marx stagecoach from a Marx playset, and it was the one that came with 2 horses, and because it was not part of a Wells Fargo set. Let's straighten this camera up. And it came with 2 horses. It was a whole lot cheaper. It was only about $12. And I have some extremely powerful magnets underneath it. And I managed to slip a magnet through the middle window. And I'm a big guy. And they gave me a dozen magnets, and I had difficulty removing the magnets from the end. They just grab everything, and if you've got the magnets within 3 inches of something with steel in it, it's gonna move it. It's gonna move the item. So these magnets underneath the Stagecoach actually are not touching the Stagecoach. Kind of hard to see with the step for the Stagecoach, but they're keeping it on there. I added a little bit of Gorilla Glue because these on each wheel, because these wheels are so close to the side of the flat car. Now this flat car is original. St. Paul and Pacific. It was a baggage car, Mark's baggage car for this set, and I simply removed the shell. I took the tongue of the Stagecoach, removed it, used to stick out, and set it down underneath and Gorilla Glued it underneath. So I think this is really cool to have this Tales of Wells Fargo and then have the Stagecoach. Now you'll see the baggage car, St. Paul and Pacific, baggage 1, and the passenger car, which is St. Paul and Pacific. So the great thing about this, I have to turn off a timer now. There, so I don't get a beep, beep, beep. Just tell me when to turn off my garden hose because I'm watering the lawn. I'm multitasking here. So what I'm going to show you is the box that this came in. Managed to get this in the original box. And it came with the track, the transformer, and everything. And great picture of the train. And I should have added that this train also smokes, also puffs smoke. So it smokes just as good, or I should say bad, as the other one. Fills the room with smoke. And there's a Mark's part number near the top. It's called the Pioneer Old-Fashioned Electric Train. This is the one that says Tales of Wells Fargo, and it came with this was also made in 59 to 60, and it came only with a baggage car and a passenger car, and the Mark's part number is 35-4822 and capital E on the end. Now I will show you what I just found at a train show from the guy who sold me that great tin plate tender. It's the Rocky Mountain Express train set. This was only sold at Sears in 1973. And this was a reissue of the Mark's William Crooks. And it's really great to have the box. The box has got trestles in it. It came with a figure 8. And you went over the middle of the track and under. and I've got the trestles in it as well. As you can see, because I've got all the track in there, I've got track in both cars, but this one tends to want to come open, so I've got the string tied around it. Now I'm going to show you the train up above. This is called the short stack, which for a time, crooks, when they went to coal, they actually lowered their stack on the original William Crooks #1. So this is actually quite historically correct. Let me get this camera closer. So here's the engine up here. You've got basically the same thing that I showed you originally with my first Crook set, except that it's got the shorter stack, and I have replaced the decals because they were so badly faded. And this, they went cheap on this. This had no front see if I can back this up. Hey, good train. This had no front truck, and the truck on this is the same truck that is found on the Marx 333. So I simply went on eBay, found one cheap, and it installed in 5 minutes. So this has the truck. They made this particular engine, not the #1, but they made other engines which were yard goats to shuttle cars around the yard that did not have a front truck, and they look like they're gonna tip over. Look rather odd, but there's old pictures from the past that show that this is historically correct. But boy, Marx went cheap on this. There is no whistle, which would have gone here. There's no steam release, which would have gone up here on this dome. There is no smoke unit, and they didn't even put a light in the front light fixture. And I'm thinking that I probably won't change it. I do like to leave things stock as possible. I think it holds their value better. I've been an old car collector for years, so I try to keep my cars as stock as possible. So like I said, this came as a set. A very cheap set. And here's our typical Marx tender. And I think I mentioned this was made in 1973. So once again, 1st Division, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad. And the decals on the tender and on the locomotive were so faded you couldn't read them anymore. I could barely make out that it said 1st Division, and that's all I could read on the tender. So I knew which decal to get, that it wasn't the Wells Fargo. But it has its original load. It's got old number 56, which is a flat car that holds lumber, and the little plastic pieces were not broken, so I didn't have to replace them. It did have some elastic bands that held the wood that, 1973 is a long time ago, doesn't seem that way. I was 24 in 1973, so makes me feel really old. But those bands were all stretched, so I put a couple rubber bands around it. Original bands are on there as well. And there's the caboose, which is number 45. I don't know if Mark sold this caboose with the number 45 separately. I love the fact that they've made it look like it's made out of pieces of wood that are vertical. But it's a great looking set, and I guess if I wanted to, I could add the smoke unit and add the light, but like I said, I'm not sure I'm gonna do that. Oh, what I should have mentioned is it has static knuckle couplers, which are fine. I don't have them on any of my other trains. It's the only train that has them, so it's fine. So now you know about these William Crookes trains, and this is all I know. What I do find unusual is on my original William Crookes set, is the fact that it didn't have the handrails and the brake wheels, and I don't know if that's an earlier car or a later car, if Marx was getting cheaper. Perhaps an expert could tell me. So anyway, that's all I know about them. The E-unit on this, on the one up on top from Sears in 1973, works excellently. These older ones tend to stick, so you got to play with them a few times and run them around the track, and then they'll, after about 5 minutes, they'll work just fine. I hate E-units. At least with Lionel you can lock them out into forward only. You can actually rewire these to forward only, but once again I think you're affecting the value if you go to sell them. So fun with trains. I hope you've enjoyed this, and it's giving you a little information you didn't have before. And once again, this has been a Big Lizard production. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.